See how it really looks like it's going through the hand?
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yo, what's going on, guys? Man, there's nothing freaking better than seeing magic. Even better when it's done live, right? And up close, like the video I was just watching. It's like being shown. I don't know. It's like being a kid again. You just don't get it, but it's happening, and it seems to be real, right? And so, why am I talking about magic? First off, David Blaine's a beast. I remember in college, the first time I saw David Blaine, it was with my roommate Andrew, and he had done a little bit of magic as a kid. He was like all into it, and we saw David Blaine do his like floating thing, and people would freak out, right? And we're like, excuse me, sneeze sometimes. Oh man, hope that wasn't too loud. And we were cutting weight, right? So we both wrestled, and so we couldn't go out and party or drink anything. So we went to the internet and found David's floating trick, and we practiced it and practiced it and practiced it, and we do it on our friends, and it is the same reaction, you know. And so magic is sometimes a double-edged sword. Why do I talk about all this? Why does this fucking matter, right? Well, here's why it matters. When it comes to traffic, there's a lot about traffic that most people don't get. Quite honestly, most people just do not get. Especially if you're a beginner and you're using traffic that's, let's call it fixed cost, or you pay a certain amount and whatever happens, happens type of deal. That's what I think about when I'm thinking about like banner advertising or something like newsletter advertising. And today, the preponderance for things like this is much larger than it's ever been, in my opinion. Because you'll see people out there, hey, I've got cheaper clicks or whatever it might be, right? And so, not knowing the quote unquote trick to the whole thing, you're like, well, that seems like a good deal. But unbeknownst to you, it might not be. And so what I want to do is I want to show you something that I've shown a small group of people. And every time I show it to just a couple of people, like, it's one of those things that kind of boggles them as it relates to what they're actually doing in their business. If you're using any sort of email-based traffic and you're paying people on a per-click basis, and you think you're getting a good deal, but then at the end, you got the same sort of like mystified look as these guys like watching David Blaine, right? But it's the opposite version. It's like, what the, nothing, what? Inverse magic, right? Well, that feeling is true. Let me show you exactly why. And maybe you want to watch this a couple times because it was profound for me just to put this together. So, let me make this bigger actually. Yeah. Google Sheets is a little bit magic. So, once I learned how to use Google Sheets a little bit, it became a very, very useful tool, especially for demonstrations like this. This is what I call the true cost per click calculator. Now, if you use newsletter marketing as a traffic source in your business, I personally believe it's one of the best ways to get traffic if you know what you're doing. If you don't, then you end up being one of the people that says, I tried that and it never ever works. It never works. Or I have friends come up or will come back from seminars and will say, yeah, man, this guy was up on stage and he was bad mouthing email traffic, and I just shake my head because to me, that just displays pure, unadulterated ignorance. And you're looking at exactly why. So let me explain this to you. When you do a type of marketing, paid marketing, that's called fixed cost media, right? Your objective is to get the most out of what you do for the least, right? You're going to pay whatever that was wrong. The most out of what you do because you're paying a fixed amount. You can't reduce the price. So you got to get more out of it, right? And that's newsletter marketing. Well, over the years, 2003 to now, there's been a consistent evolution of a process that I've developed when I do this myself in my own business. And there's several steps that I don't think most people even know exist that must come prior to pulling the trigger and spending money, or else what you think you're paying ain't even close to what you're really paying. Not even close. Because if you're paying a fixed cost for something, then the name of the game is to reduce the risk by not paying where you're most likely to lose, right? How do you do that? You eliminate those things that show signs of not being likely to be profitable. I guess that's the best way to say it. And so you sniff this out when you got to do it yourself, and you figure it out over years, and you spend a lot of money to figure it out. I'll give you my steps in terms of what I do in just a few, but let me show you, because you probably can see some of this, what I mean. Imagine you find a website and they say, hey, we'll sell you clicks for 25 cents per click. You say, that's awesome. Give me 1,000. And you feel abundant and wealthy, and boom, this is when it's going to happen, right? Wrong. Because if you don't understand what I just said and you don't follow steps to eliminate decisions that are most likely to lose you money, then you're not paying 25 cents per click, right? If you're totally ignorant, let's say it that way, you have no idea what you're doing, you just go, this is a good deal. That's how I started. The reality is that 25 cents you're paying is more like paying $25 per click. Because at the end of the day, this filtration process of eliminating things that you should say no to before you spend $1 gets rid of 99% of the junk, right? Once you fine tune it, you figure out how to do it for yourself. That's what we do. I mean, that's why we started. I don't know if you know me. My name's Daegan, right? And I own an advertising agency called the Home Business Agency, and we buy a lot of traffic, figure out if it's profitable for us, and then if it is, we make it available to our clients, right? And the reason is exactly what I'm showing you here, because once you get to the place where you found traffic that is verified as profitable, and then you offer it to a marketplace at a certain price, that's the moment where you're paying scratch for it. If you're just rolling the dice, that 25 cents, well, multiply it by 100. What you're really paying is more like $25 a click. And so what I put in just some numbers, right? We could change any of these numbers. This could be, I don't know, 35% opt-in rate, 40% opt-in rate, 99% opt-in rate, whatever. Your percent of conversion from lead to sale, we can change all these numbers, but this is just for demonstration purposes, so you kind of get this, right? Sorry about that. Well, 25 cents, if we can imagine paying 25 cents per click, and 33% of those clicks turn into actually leads, and 1% of our leads turn into a sale, and we make $500 per sale, which ain't bad. Well, what does that look like if we don't know, or we aren't dealing with what we know for sure is traffic that's already been proven to be profitable? Well, at the worst of levels, the highest levels of ignorance, really you're paying more like $25 per click, because you haven't eliminated 99 sources of traffic that should be before you spend your money. So really, 25 cents per click is more like paying $25 per click, because only 1 out of 100 clicks is going to be good. And so what does that mean in terms of how much does it cost you to actually get a sale, right? People talk about these things, but they don't show you the true numbers and what that means with what you're doing with your money out there online. Well, if you're paying $25 to get one good click, which is the reality of an unfiltered, let me just spend some money and see what happens sort of mentality, it's going to cost you $7,500 to get a $500 sale. Doesn't take a genius, right, to know that that ain't going to work. You're going to go broke. And hopefully this is making some things, maybe experiences you've had too, more clear. And so how much profit do we make in that scenario? Well, we lose $7,000 about. So what would our conversion rate need to be? How many sales out of the leads that you get would you need to get in order to make this math right here work? You need 15.2% of your leads to buy. That's a huge gap, especially if you're a beginning marketer and you don't know how to create amazing offers, right? And you're kind of relying on the thing you're selling to do the selling for you. You're not going to go from a 1% to a 15%. Like, there's only 2 people in the world I know that can do that. 2 people. You got to be a genius, quite honestly. And so then, what would your budget have to be if you took to marketing with this a completely naive sort of mentality and said, let me just go get some good, cheap traffic and let's just see if it works? To be conservative and ensure you're going to get a sale. Not ensure, but give yourself a fair chance of getting a sale. You'd have to go out there and basically be willing to spend about $37,000, right? $37,000. And all I did here was I took this number and multiplied it by 5. Why by 5? I multiplied it by 5 because you're not going to get a sale every 100 leads. It's not, the math doesn't work out that uniformly. But over time it does. So to see it work out, go about 5x of the conversion rate, and you'll start to approach a more uniform conversion rate. So you have to be willing to go to the market and say, let's throw $38,000 at it and let's see what happens to get one sale. And with that, your risk tolerance would have to be about 93%. You'd have to be willing to say, with that $38,000 I'm throwing out there, am I willing? I got to be willing to just basically burn 93% of it into the wind. See, when you just see that 25 cents per click, none of this shows itself. It's like an amazing magic trick. And you feel silly, you feel dumb when things don't work and you blame yourself, but it ain't your fault. It's just you don't know yet, right? We don't know. Well, what if you learned the first step, right? You learned how to get rid of, let's say, 50% of what's bad, and you reduce your chance of losing by 50%. What does that look like? Well, I'm sure you've been looking at this for a while. It's like $12.50 per click. Still, it's pretty. It's not what you're thinking when you're getting 25-cent clicks and you're trying to get a $500 sale, right? You don't think you're paying $12.50. It's going to cost you about $3,700 to get a sale. You're going to have to be willing to lose about $3,300 every time you do get a sale. So you, in other words, have to make all that up on the back end. In order for that to work, you either have to be a great marketer on the back end, or you'd have to increase that conversion rate to 7.6%. Again, it's not really realistic. What sort of budget would you have to go in with if you knew how to get rid of 50% of potentially bad traffic and still play with 25-cent clicks? You need about $18,000. And even then, you'd still need to have about an 87% risk tolerance. Different view than what you see, right? Different view. Well, what if you got to the next step and you see, because these numbers, by the way, are me going back through the steps that we go through and then looking at how much risk does it actually reduce. And like I said, I'll give you the steps. The first 2 steps. Well, now we're down to $6.25 per click. But still, you think you're paying 25 cents per click. So you're really optimistic, but here's what you're really paying. What do you got to do? It's going to cost you about $1,900 to get a sale. You're not thinking that, right? You're thinking you're getting a great deal and things are going to work. And what has to happen in order for you to get sales consistently, you have to be willing to lose about $1,400 on the front end. In order for you to bring yourself to break even, you'd have to take that 1% conversion rate and up it to 3.8%. Now, we're getting to the realm of where maybe, I haven't seen that happen very often with someone that's new. I'll say it like that, but maybe, right? It's like, it might happen. You might do something that makes you 400% better. But what is it? You tell me. And here, instead of $40,000, $38,000, $10,000, right? You have to be willing to throw about $10,000 out there to get one sale, or to, in other words, approach that 1% conversion rate and see it work out pretty uniformly. And with that, you'd have to have about a risk tolerance of about 74%. So you'd have to be willing to lose 74% of that money, right? And so where are these numbers coming from, just so you know? These numbers are simply dividing Well, you can see the math right there. Well, maybe you can't. Depends on how I do this video. All I'm doing is saying, what percentage of this number is 500? Right? 500 is 7% of $37,879. There's nothing really more math. There's no real magic there. Right? All right. But well, what if you knew all those steps? And then you got to a place where, right here, you finally got to a place where you were looking at untested sources, but you'd essentially eliminated 50% and then 50% again, and then 80% from there. And so you're dealing with like the last 20% after all of that. Here's where things get to an area where you can play. Because here, at $1.25 per click, it only costs you about $378 if you got a 33% opt-in rate to make a sale. And guess what? Now, you're in profit. Now you're actually starting to cook. Now your budget is something more reasonable for a person that might be expecting to start to market on the internet, right? But the question is, like, do you know these steps? Do you know how to get here? And even there, it's not the best. An untested source that's low risk is 5 times or so. And so let me stop and explain this to you. Whenever we test a source that we think is potentially good, about 1 out of 5 of those tests, i.e. $1.25, but one out of 5 of those tests ends up being profitable. That's where the number comes from. It's good, but it's not the best. What happens when you get to a source of traffic that is low risk and then has been tested and that 80% has been removed there? Only there, after it's been verified, proven profitable, are you dealing with the exact same cost per click as what you're being advertised. And now the sort of sad thing here is this: it's that the guy or the person, person trying to sell you traffic, I guarantee you doesn't know this. So they're making a straight deal. Most of them. Some people are crooks, right? And so they believe you believe, everyone believes there's a great deal happening. But what's really happening is, most likely here, got a little bit of season 2, you're here. If you're starting to catch on, you're here. But it's only here, $1.25. And if you're making, say, $500 per sale, what if you're only making $100 per sale? What happens then? It's only there, though, do we get to a place where it starts to become kind of realistic, right? And so I hope this has been valuable to you, you know? It was for me to flesh this out in this way and see it all at once. And it's always been an experience, sort of a cathartic experience for folks I've shown this to, because you can tell the person all day long, like, do you really know how much you're paying per click? But until you walk a person through a situation like this and they kind of go to themselves, fuck, dude. And now I see why nothing ever works. Because you didn't even know you were supposed to test something. You just got a great deal. And that's where we're working here. That's where a lot of people get really discouraged and fail. And so I'm done talking. I hope this has been valuable to you. If I'll put a link here, but it goes to my website, and it goes to our me basically showing you all the stuff that we do to get traffic. And the link should be here. I'm not even going to say what the link is because it might change. Just look here. There's a link. Go there, opt in. You'll get some cool videos, but you'll see steps. Every single step that we use laid out. You can make the decision to do that yourself, or just not do work and just get this straight up. That's what leverage is in life. So, yeah, hope this has been enlightening. See you on the other side.